All right, this is not a fancy video, it's just very practical in that I wanted to talk a little bit about the new Canon SL3 and what's different between it and the SL2. And I may not cover every single spec, there's just a few key features, especially for the video shooters slash vloggers slash filmmakers or serious filmmakers, just whoever wants to make videos with the camera that you need to be aware of. And it's interesting because I feel like it's kind of the child of the SL2 and the M50 and the new EOS RP kind of all bundled together. And here's what I mean in that there's a few things you need to know. One, the new SL3 does 4K, and that's exciting because Canon 4K actually looks really awesome when you put the camera on the tripod. My Canon M50, which is essentially the same internals as the SL3 with, you know, the 4K recording ability, the Digic 8 processor, the 4K on it looked awesome. Like really, really good, provided that you left the camera on the tripod and didn't move it around because the rolling shutter on it was atrocious. But when it's on that, it looks amazing with the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. It's sharp, the colors look awesome. The only thing you need to be aware of is the crop factor in 4K is large. Meaning what they do with the sensors, they actually take the native 24 megapixel sensor and they actually crop out the 8 megapixel middle in it to get the 4K. So I think it works out to like a 2.3 crop factor or something that's like a good chunk more. Know that if you're using the SL3 for 4K, you're not gonna get the full width, which is already cropped in a little bit. But if you're, let's say you wanted to vlog in 4K and you wanted to use the 10 to 18 millimeter, you're not gonna get that same width of what the 10 millimeter will look like. It's gonna be cropped in another like good chunk. So just know that you're gonna have to back the camera up if you wanna use 4K, and you're not gonna get as shallow depth of field, meaning blurry backgrounds, because you're cropping in a little bit more, okay? So it has 4K, but the 4K is cropped. That's one thing to know. The other big thing to me that is crazy to me, and part of it makes it tough to recommend the SL3 over the M50, is that they have, once again, like they did in the RP, removed 24 frames per second at 1080p. You get 24 frames per second in 4K, that's your only option. You can't shoot in 30 or 60 or anything else. You can shoot 4K 24 frames per second. But at 1080p, you can shoot 30 and 60 frames per second, no 24 frames per second option. Which, if you're not familiar, 24 frames per second is what movies are shot in. It gives that kind of cinematic feel because it's a little bit blurrier and doesn't have as smooth a motion, which is good for that style. Like if you're wanting to make something that feels like film, you're gonna need to shoot in 4K, but then you're gonna be cropped in more, so you're gonna have to, you can't be as wide, and then the rolling shutter when you move around is really bad in 4K. So if you're like 1080p, which typically Canon 1080p, I really like the look of. On the M50, the 1080 looks fantastic, but you can't shoot it in 24 frames per second based on the current manual of the SL3, which I thought could be a mistake, but they did that on the RP, and so I see them doing that on their lower end cameras going forward, which is, it's really, really too bad. One thing that's nice that they've done in the SL3 is that they've put a much bigger battery in it, which is awesome because the SL2 had a really small battery, and somehow they've got basically the same, very similar, within I think a few grams size and weight, but a much bigger battery in there, so your battery life is going to be longer. Now you've got a Digic 8 processor in the SL3. That should mean faster focusing. It should have meant better low light, and it might be able to go up to ISO 12,800 in video over ISO 6400, which was the limit in the SL2. I can't confirm that 100%, but the M50 can do that. The only thing is, low light on that sensor with the Digic 8, if it's similar to the M50, is not very good. Once you start getting up to like ISO 2500 and above, it starts to look mushy and the colors are kind of dull, and it's only okay. Can you still tell stories with it? Absolutely, but don't think that you're going to get a big increase between the SL2 going to the SL3 when it comes to low light. So with all that being said, For me, I think the most exciting thing about the SL3 coming is the price drop that the SL2 is going to take, because I have another review. I can't remember which way I need to point. Somewhere up here, I'll link it. SL2 is still one of my favorite vlogging cameras because it's small, it's light, not as small as an M50, but light. The lenses you can get with it are awesome and cheap. There's a creator kit somewhere around here. There'll be a link below, and maybe I'll throw it up here if I'm not feeling lazy, but where you get the Canon 10 to 18 millimeter f4.5 to 5.6 IS, which is a great vlogging lens, and the 50 millimeter 1.8, which is the best lens to start with for photos and shooting B-roll for a really awesome price. It fluctuates a little bit, but I think around like $300 to $400 US. And that is a great kit to get you started, especially like vlogging and B-roll and wide angle, even if you want to do real estate and details. There's so much stuff that you can do and learn with that. And that whole package now especially should be well under $1,000 because of the SL3 coming out. Why would you buy the SL3? If you're doing video, maybe for photos, like I think the focusing should be a little bit faster. It's a good small entry-level camera. I mean, the battery life is a little bit better than the SL2. It does add 4K if you're okay with the crop. But for me, I think I would, like the M50 in the middle, you get 24 frames per second at 1080p. You're gonna get the same 4K in an even smaller, lighter package. And it should be typically a little bit cheaper than that, but you are going to have to buy a lens adapter to get all the other Canon lenses. But that one kind of gives you a little bit more of both worlds. So the SL3 to me is weird that they did that. I like the battery life, but I like that they threw 4K in, but it's not without its limitations. It's just that whole 24 frames per second thing, some of you, it may not matter. Like if you're just doing basic vlogging, who cares about 24? But if you're going, hey, I want to have that cinematic feel, I want to, follow in the footsteps of Peter McKinnon and Matty Apoya and the Dope Squad, or, other people who are creating cool stuff, that can matter because videos shot in 30 frames per second, they feel different. They just do. So interesting limitation in my initial dive through all that stuff. That's kind of the main things that I picked out there. Other cool thing though about the SL3, it seems, is that they're giving you a clean HDMI output. It was a little bit fuzzy in the manual, but it looked like you had the ability to take HDMI and leave the icons on, or to actually go and turn the icons off and get clean HDMI output, which is great for live streaming or even going out to an external recorder. And even in some of the language there, I was trying to figure out, are you guys saying you're giving a 10-bit 422 HDMI output? Which maybe, the test remained to be seen, but you could get a really high quality feed coming out of there, which could be actually a really neat feature. The M50, the only way you can get a clean HDMI out without any icons is to actually turn off the autofocus, because the one box you can't turn off is the auto face detect, and when you move around that will come on. If you turn everything else off and you turn off autofocus, then you can get clean, but then you lose that good Canon autofocus, which is too bad. The SL2 did not have any ability to do that from what I remember when I used it. So that could be neat about the SL3. I think that's it. I'm just rambling off memory, but that's it. If you have any other questions, or you guys know that something I said in here is correct or incorrect, that's what the comment section is for below. But I just went diving through the manual to find out, hey, what's different and new about that? There were some things that I saw and had questions about. So I'm Dustin. Thanks for watching.